The morning started like any other, with sunlight filtering softly through the lace curtains and the familiar scent of brewed coffee filling the kitchen. But inside my chest, something was already breaking. When I found the note on the kitchen table, written in his careful looping handwriting, I felt as though an invisible hand had squeezed my heart until it bruised. "I'm sorry, Martha. I need to find myself again. Please understand. 40 years. 40 years of shared mornings, quiet evenings, and the unspoken routines that stitched two lives into one. And now those 4 decades were reduced to a slip of paper, cold and final." I sank into the old wooden chair, my hands trembling as the words blurred in front of me. How do you respond to the man who promised forever, deciding that forever no longer includes you? I remember the first time I met Henry, young, full of dreams, and with a smile that could light up the darkest rooms. We married in the spring, surrounded by blooming lilacs and hopeful faces. Together we built a life from scratch. A modest home, Sunday dinners filled with laughter, and late-night talks about the future. He was my partner, my confidant, the man I trusted with every secret and fear. But time has a way of eroding even the strongest foundations. The years had softened our edges, replaced fiery passion with comfortable routine, and I had grown accustomed to the quiet companionship we shared. I never imagined it would end like this, with sudden silence and a note left on the kitchen table. The house felt emptier the moment I realized he was truly gone. His side of the bed, still neatly made, mocked me with its untouched stillness. The familiar creak of the floorboards beneath his footsteps was replaced by an unbearable absence. I wandered from room to room, searching for some sign that this was a mistake, a cruel joke. But there was nothing. Only the echo of memories and the sting of betrayal. Later that afternoon, I found myself at the window, staring out at the street where neighbors passed by with brisk steps and guarded glances. I wondered if they had heard. If the news of Henry's departure had already spread like wildfire. Just as fear began to tighten its grip, the doorbell rang. It was Mrs. Thompson from next door, her kind face etched with worry. "Martha dear, I heard. I just wanted to check on you." Her voice was gentle, but I saw the undercurrent of shock and sympathy. "This must be so sudden. We're all here if you need anything." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Thank you. It's just hard to believe." She squeezed my hand before leaving, a small gesture that meant more than words. The community I had known for years suddenly felt complicated, supportive, yet laced with a quiet curiosity I wasn't ready to face. That evening, I sat alone in the living room, clutching an old photograph of the two of us on our wedding day. Henry's eyes sparkled with hope, and my own smile seemed untouched by the years of struggle and sacrifice that lay ahead. I thought about the countless times I had put his needs before my own, the jobs I took to keep the bills paid, the meals I prepared when he worked late, the celebrations I planned to brighten our days. Had it all been enough? Had I been enough? Beneath the sorrow, a flicker of something else stirred, a fragile thread of strength that I hadn't noticed before. Maybe it was too soon to claim it, but I knew I couldn't let this break me entirely. 40 years of marriage had taught me resilience, even if I hadn't realized it until now. The next morning I took a slow walk to the mailbox, the crisp air filling my lungs with each breath. The neighborhood looked the same, but I saw it differently now, through the lens of someone who had lost a lifetime of companionship in a single night. I was not just Martha, Henry's wife. I was Martha, a woman standing at the edge of an uncertain path. At the corner I met Mr. Jenkins, a retired teacher who had lived in the neighborhood for decades. His eyes were kind but tinged with concern. "I heard about Henry. Must have been quite a shock." I nodded, forcing a small smile. "Yes, it was." He hesitated, then added, "If you ever want to talk or need help, you know where to find me." It was a simple offer, but it meant the world. I realized then that I wasn't as alone as I felt. There were people around me, quietly watching, ready to step forward in their own way. That afternoon I called my daughter, Emily, who lived in the city. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the hurt beneath. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I wish I could be there with you." "I wish you were," I admitted, fighting back tears. "I don't know what to do." "Just take it one day at a time," she said softly. "You're stronger than you think." We spoke for a while longer, and with every word, a small part of the weight lifted. I realized that while Henry had walked away, my family remained. and maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to rebuild. That evening, as I prepared a simple dinner, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the kitchen window. The woman staring back looked tired but determined. The road ahead was unknown and frightening, but I was still here. I had survived storms before, and I would survive this. The night grew quiet, save for the ticking of the old clock on the wall. I sat by the window, cradling a cup of tea, and let the tears fall freely. Not just for what was lost, but for the strength quietly growing inside me, the strength to face tomorrow, to face the world without him. The community around me buzzed with whispers and speculation, but I made a silent promise. I would not be defined by abandonment. I would find my voice again, piece by piece, day by day. And as the stars began to twinkle faintly in the darkened sky, I realized that even in the deepest heartbreak, there is a seed of hope waiting to bloom. In the days that followed Henry's sudden departure, the quiet in my house grew heavier, pressing into every corner like a thick fog. The neighborhood, once a comforting backdrop of familiar faces and nodding hellos, morphed into a stage where whispers and sideways glances were the unspoken script. I became painfully aware of how quickly news travels, and how quickly sympathy can feel like scrutiny. At the grocery store, I noticed the way the cashier paused a little longer than usual, her eyes flickering with something I couldn't quite place. Pity? Curiosity? Judgment? I forced a smile and shifted my gaze to the shelves, pretending the weight of those looks didn't settle in my chest like a stone. The church ladies who had once greeted me warmly with hugs and tea invitations now offered polite nods, their voices lowered when I passed by. I overheard fragments of conversation. So sudden. I never thought Henry would do that. Poor Martha, how must she feel? Each word felt like a jab, a reminder that I was now the subject of the town's quiet gossip. I found myself withdrawing, retreating into the safety of my own thoughts and the familiar walls of the house that had become both sanctuary and prison. Calls from friends went unanswered. Invitations to lunch or bridge games were declined with vague excuses. The betrayal I felt wasn't just from Henry. It seeped from the disapproval I sensed in those around me. One afternoon, as rain tapped gently against the window pane, I sat curled in my favorite armchair, a knitted shawl draped over my shoulders. The silence was broken only by the occasional drip from the leaky faucet, echoing the slow drip of my hope. I felt the raw sting of loneliness, not merely the absence of Henry, but the widening gap between me and the community I'd called home for so long. Then the phone rang. It was Emily. Her voice was warm but tinged with concern. "Mom, I'm worried about you. You've barely left the house, and I know how hard this is, but shutting everyone out won't help." I bit my lip, the urge to pull away stronger than ever. "I don't want to be a burden," I whispered. "Mom, you're not a burden. You're my mother. Let me help you." Her words pierced the fog, and for the first time since Henry left, I felt a flicker of connection. Later that evening we spoke for hours, about the emptiness I felt, the shame I wrestled with, and the fear of facing a future so drastically changed. I admitted my doubts and vulnerabilities, my voice trembling as I confessed how I wondered if I had failed somehow. Emily's reply was steady and unwavering. "You didn't fail. Life throws things at us that we can't control. But you're not alone, Mom. You have me and you have people who care. You just have to let them in." That conversation planted a seed, an ember of resolve that began to warm the cold edges of my heart. The next day I forced myself to step outside, walking slowly down the street, nodding to neighbors who offered tentative smiles. Some returned the gesture. Others looked away, perhaps unsure how to act around a woman suddenly changed by circumstance. Mrs. Thompson caught up with me halfway down the block. "Martha, dear, there's a support group that meets at the community center on Thursdays. Women who've been through similar experiences. It might help to talk to others, to share your story." I hesitated, the fear of exposing my pain to strangers threatening to keep me rooted to the spot. Yet the loneliness had become unbearable, and the thought of connection, though daunting, was a lifeline. "I'll think about it," I said quietly. That evening I sat by the window watching the world outside as dusk settled in. The idea of stepping into a room full of strangers, baring my heart, was terrifying. But beneath the fear, a whisper of hope stirred. Maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to carry this alone. The following Thursday, with trembling hands and a heart pounding like a drum, I entered the small community center. The room was filled with women of all ages, some with faces marked by sorrow, others by quiet determination. They welcomed me with warm smiles and gentle nods, their eyes reflecting the same pain I carried. As I listened to their stories of loss, betrayal, and the slow, painful journey toward healing, I felt the walls I had built around myself begin to crumble. When it was my turn, my voice cracked as I shared the story of Henry's departure, the shock, and the loneliness that followed. Tears streamed down my cheeks, but I no longer felt ashamed. One woman reached out, her hand covering mine. "You're not alone, Martha. We're here with you." In that circle of strangers turned sisters, I found a fragile sense of belonging. The support group offered more than just empathy. It gave me courage to face the days ahead. Encouraged by this newfound connection, I began to notice small acts of kindness around me. A neighbor dropping off a casserole, a card left in my mailbox, a phone call to check in. These gestures, though simple, rekindled a spark of hope. At home, I started to open the curtains wider, letting sunlight flood the rooms that had felt so dark. I took up my knitting again, a hobby I had abandoned in the whirl of years gone by. Each stitch was a small act of reclaiming myself. One afternoon, Emily came to visit. As we sat together in the garden, she reached for my hand. "Mom, you're stronger than you realize. This is just a chapter, not your whole story." Her words settled deep within me. I realized that beneath the pain was a well of resilience waiting to be tapped. The neighborhood, too, began to shift. The whispers softened, replaced by genuine smiles and invitations. Some friends who had drifted away returned, their eyes no longer filled with pity, but with respect for the woman who refused to be broken. Still, the path ahead was uncertain. There were moments when the loneliness crept back, and the sting of betrayal flared freshly. But with each passing day, I felt a little more grounded, a little more myself. One evening, as twilight draped the sky in shades of purple and gold, I sat on the porch, breathing in the cool air. The world was moving forward, indifferent to my pain, yet somehow I was moving too. I had faced the loneliness, the social stigma, and the weight of loss. I had confronted the temptation to hide away, and had chosen instead to reach out, to rebuild. The journey was far from over, but for the first time since Henry left, I felt the stirrings of hope, the quiet strength of a woman beginning to reclaim her life. When I first stood before the small gathering at the community center, my hands shook so badly I thought I might drop the notes I'd painstakingly prepared. The room was filled with faces both familiar and new, women who had walked through their own storms, some still weathering the fiercest winds. I had come to share my story, but in that moment, the magnitude of what I was about to do crashed over me like a wave. "Good evening," I began, my voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Martha, and just a few months ago, my husband of 40 years left me without warning. I was left to pick up the pieces of a life I thought was steady and certain." The words felt strange, like stepping outside myself and watching someone else speak. But as I continued recounting the shock, the loneliness, and the painful process of learning to stand on my own, the room grew quiet, each listener leaning in as though my story was their own. I spoke not just of loss but of awakening, how beneath the heartbreak a fragile strength had begun to bloom. I told them about the moments I had thought I'd crumble, and how the kindness of neighbors, the support of my daughter, and the women in this very room had helped me find my footing again. When I finished, a hush lingered before the first woman stepped forward, her eyes glistening. "Thank you for sharing, Martha. Your courage gives me hope." That night, as I walked home beneath a sky studded with stars, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: connection. My story, once a secret shame, had become a bridge to others. I realized that my pain was not an isolated wound but part of a larger tapestry of human experience. In the weeks that followed, I found myself returning to the community center, not just as a participant but as an active voice. I listened deeply to others' stories, offering empathy and encouragement. I discovered that sharing our vulnerabilities was not a sign of weakness but a source of strength. One afternoon during a gathering, I was asked to help organize a support network for women facing abandonment and loss. Reluctantly at first, I agreed. The process was both daunting and invigorating, setting up meetings, coordinating speakers, and reaching out to those who might benefit from the group's embrace. Through this work, I witnessed transformations that mirrored my own. Women who arrived weighed down by grief began to smile again, reclaiming joy in small victories. The community, once silent or judgmental, started to rally around us, recognizing the courage it took to rebuild lives shattered by unexpected loss. Local newspapers caught wind of our efforts, and soon, stories about our group appeared in print and on community bulletin boards. I was interviewed once, nervously at first, then with growing confidence. I spoke openly about the challenges faced by older women who often suffer in silence, forgotten beneath societal assumptions that their lives are complete or less meaningful. The attention brought both support and scrutiny. Some community members expressed admiration, while others questioned why such issues needed public airing. But I stood firm, knowing that shedding light on these struggles was vital. Our stories deserved to be heard. Back at home, my relationships deepened. Emily visited more often, her presence a balm to my soul. Our conversations shifted from cautious concern to shared dreams of what life could hold beyond loss. We planned trips, joined a book club together, and even started gardening, a small patch of earth where new life could take root. Neighbors who had once kept their distance now stopped to chat, offering invitations and company. The walls of isolation slowly crumbled, replaced by a web of genuine support and friendship. One evening during a community potluck, I was surprised when the mayor approached to thank me personally for my work. "Martha, your story has touched many. You've become a beacon for those who thought they had no light left to guide them." I smiled, feeling a warmth that was not just from the summer evening. I'm just someone who decided to keep walking, even when the path was dark. That night, as I sat by the window, I reflected on the journey from heartbreak to this moment of connection and purpose. I had begun as a woman shattered by abandonment, but now I was part of a movement, small but growing, that challenged the silence around loss and resilience. I thought about the women I had met, each with their own stories of pain and courage. Together, we were rewriting what it meant to face adversity in the later chapters of life. No longer invisible, no longer alone. The community had shifted too. The stigma that once hung heavy began to lift, replaced by empathy and understanding. People were learning that strength is often born from vulnerability, and that healing is a collective act. Still, I knew there were days ahead when the ache of absence would resurface, when memories would sting sharply, and when the future would feel uncertain once more. But now, I had a network of support, a voice, and a purpose. As dawn broke the following morning, casting golden light across the garden, I rose with a renewed sense of hope. The journey was far from over, but I had taken a decisive step toward reclaiming my life, not just for myself, but for all the women who would walk this path beside me. In the quiet moments before the world awoke, I whispered a promise to the woman I was becoming: to embrace resilience, to seek connection, and to live fully, no matter what lay ahead. After months of sharing my story and supporting others at the community center, I found myself stepping into a role I never imagined I'd occupy, that of a mentor and organizer. What began as small gatherings had grown into a vibrant support network, a place where women who once felt invisible could come together, share their pain, and find strength in each other's resilience. I would never have predicted that I'd be coordinating meetings, reaching out to local organizations, and even speaking at public events to raise awareness about loneliness and abandonment among the elderly. Yet, with each new responsibility, I felt a deepening sense of purpose, as if my heartbreak had been transformed into something meaningful. One chilly morning, as I arranged chairs for a support group meeting, a woman named Clara approached me hesitantly. She was new, her eyes shadowed with the weight of a recent loss. "I heard about your group," she said softly. "I'm not sure I'm ready to talk, but I think I need this." I smiled gently, remembering my own early days of silence. "You don't have to speak until you're ready. Just being here is a brave first step." Clara nodded, and as weeks passed, she blossomed, her story unfolding slowly amid shared tears and laughter. Watching her journey reminded me how vital this network had become, a lifeline in a world that often overlooked the struggles of older women. Our growing support group caught the attention of the local newspaper, which ran a feature titled "Strength and Sisterhood: Women Rebuilding After Loss." The article highlighted our meetings, the stories shared, and the quiet revolution of resilience we were fostering. Suddenly, our little circle was no longer just a refuge. It was a beacon drawing others out of isolation. With the increased visibility came invitations to speak at community events and senior centers. Each time I stood before an audience, I told our collective story: the loneliness that follows abandonment, the courage it takes to start anew, and the power of connection. Sometimes after these talks, women would approach me with tears in their eyes, sharing their own experiences or thanking me for giving voice to feelings they had long buried. The work was demanding yet fulfilling. It also brought unexpected moments of reconciliation. Some neighbors who once whispered behind closed doors reached out, offering apologies and support. One afternoon, Mrs. Peterson, a woman who had been distant since Henry left, stopped by with a freshly baked pie. "I'm sorry if I ever made you feel alone," she said, her eyes sincere. "You've shown us all what strength looks like." At home, the changes rippled through my relationships. Emily and I grew closer than ever, sharing not only the pain but also the hope that now colored our days. We began planting a small garden in the backyard, a symbol of new growth and renewal. Tending to the soil, planting seeds, and watching shoots emerge became a soothing ritual, a metaphor for the life I was cultivating. Not all moments were easy. Some days the weight of loss pressed heavily, and I questioned whether I could keep moving forward. But the community I had helped build became a safety net. When despair threatened, I reached out, knowing that others understood and would hold me steady. Our efforts soon attracted media interest beyond the local paper. A regional radio station invited me for an interview to discuss the challenges faced by older women experiencing abandonment and isolation. I spoke candidly about the stigma, the hidden struggles, and the importance of creating supportive spaces. The response was overwhelming. Calls and messages from women across the area who felt seen and heard for the first time. The growing recognition brought a mix of emotions. Pride in what we had accomplished mingled with the sobering awareness of how many still suffered in silence. It fueled my determination to keep pushing, to expand our reach, and to challenge the societal narratives that left so many feeling invisible. Through all this, my family rallied around me. Emily attended meetings when she could, offering encouragement and practical help. My son, who lived farther away, called more often, his voice filled with admiration. Even old friends who had drifted away returned, their support a balm to my weary heart. One evening, as I prepared for a community fundraiser to support our group, I received a letter from a woman named Grace. She wrote of her gratitude for the network we had created, sharing how it had saved her from despair after her own abandonment. Her words touched me deeply, a reminder that the ripples of kindness and courage spread far beyond what we could see. That night, sitting by the window with the soft glow of the street lamp outside, I reflected on the journey from heartbreak to purpose. The woman who had once sat alone in a silent house was now part of a community bound by shared strength and hope. I thought about the faces of the women I had met, their stories etched into my memory, their resilience inspiring me every day. Together we had transformed pain into power, isolation into connection. Despite the progress, I knew the work was far from over. There were still barriers to break, stories to tell, and lives to touch. But I was no longer afraid of the path ahead. I had found not only my voice but a chorus of voices rising alongside me. As dawn crept over the horizon, casting soft light over the garden we had planted, I felt a quiet peace. Each new day was a chance to nurture growth, not just in the soil beneath my hands, but in the hearts of those around me. And in that promise I found the strength to continue. The morning sun filtered gently through the curtains, casting warm light across the room where I sat quietly, a cup of tea resting between my hands. The journey from that heartbreaking day when Henry left to this moment of calm reflection felt both distant and vividly present. I traced the rim of the cup, thinking about the path I had walked, the valleys of sorrow, the peaks of newfound strength, and the steady, winding road in between. I remembered the nights when tears had been my only companions, the weight of loneliness pressing down like a relentless tide. But I also recalled the moments of kindness, a neighbor's smile, a friend's embrace, the courage found in a circle of women who understood without judgment. Those small threads had woven together a tapestry of hope and resilience. Looking around the room, I saw signs of the life I was reclaiming. The garden thriving outside the window, a symbol of growth and renewal. Photographs of friends and family who had become pillars of support. The well-worn pages of journals filled with reflections and dreams. Each item spoke of a woman who had chosen to rise, to embrace the uncertain future with open arms. I thought of the community that had embraced me, neighbors who had once whispered now offering warm greetings, women who had shared their stories and found healing in the shared pain, the wider world that had begun to listen to voices often silenced by age and circumstance. Our collective journey had transformed us, challenging stereotypes and inspiring empathy across generations. In the quiet moments, I felt gratitude, not just for the support I had received, but for the unexpected strength I discovered within myself. It was a strength born not from denial of hardship, but from facing it head-on, from allowing vulnerability to become a bridge rather than a barrier. My relationship with Emily had deepened into a partnership of mutual respect and love. We planned trips, shared books, and nurtured dreams once shelved aside. Our bond was a testament to the enduring power of family, even amid upheaval. As I prepared for the day ahead, I paused to reflect on what it truly meant to live fully after loss. It was not about forgetting the past or pretending pain did not exist. It was about embracing the fullness of life, the joys and sorrows intertwined, and choosing to move forward with grace. The support network I had helped build continued to flourish, a living testament to the human spirit's capacity to heal and grow. Women who once felt isolated now stood together, their voices rising in unison, a chorus of resilience echoing through the community. I thought about the countless others still facing loneliness and uncertainty, and I felt a quiet resolve to keep advocating, to keep shining light into the shadows. Each story shared, each hand held, was a step toward a more compassionate world. As afternoon light shifted to evening glow, I sat once more by the window, the garden bathed in soft hues. The journey had changed me in ways I could never have anticipated. I was no longer defined by abandonment but by the choices I made in its wake. I smiled softly to myself, feeling the steady beat of life pulsing through me. The road ahead was still unwritten, filled with promise and challenge alike. But I was ready, rooted in strength, surrounded by love, and open to whatever chapters lay ahead. In that moment, I understood that living fully after loss was not a destination but a continuous journey, a dance between holding on and letting go, between sorrow and joy, between past and future. And so, with a heart both tender and fierce, I embraced the day, grateful for the enduring spirit within and the community that had helped me find my way home.